am going to make one of my favorite meals that I had growing up. It's so not bougie at all, but it's yellow chicken, which is in a curry sauce with rice. And then we're going to finish our prep for the sourdough so they can go in the fridge for a bulk rise. Okay, but let's start the rice. So we're going to do 3 cups of rice. I'm using jasmine rice. And we're going to make sure we rinse it up to get all the extra starch off of it so that you have a nice rice when it comes out. So 1, 2, and 3. Get these last little ones that wanted to escape on me. And then we're going to give it a good rinse because we want, when you rinse it all clear, not only does it get off any like residual chemicals like arsenic or whatnot, but it makes for a much nicer rice. They won't be as stuck together, lumpy. You know, sometimes when you cook rice, it kind of gets pasty. Washing them allows like the grains to get rid of that excess rice starch on it. So we want to definitely rinse it really well. Also, like there's methods where you soak the rice for like an hour beforehand. Also leads to a pretty tender rice. We're just going to give it a nice rinse, and then we're going to pop it in our water with a little bit of oil and salt. So we're doing 3 cups of rice, which means we're going to have 4.5 cups of water. I already poured it in here. So we're going to add our rice to the water, and you don't have to have your water boiling. And then we're going to put it on high. And we're going to make sure we stir it a couple of times because in the beginning, it is really starchy and it can stick to the bottom of your pan. So you just want to make sure you stir it a couple of times during this process so you don't have any that stick to the bottom. And then we're going to give it a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon or so. There we go. And a little bit of olive oil. You could use butter if you want. But we're going to use about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I like to always, once I put my olive oil in, I like to give it a nice stir as well. And easy. I know rice is pretty easy. It's not a super hard thing to go, but you know, sometimes people are still learning and that's fine. Okay, we're going to watch that as it starts to boil. I'll stir it a couple of times, but now let's prep our base for our yellow chicken. So for some reason, this lid always likes to get stuck. We're going to put a little bit of olive oil in here, about 2 tablespoons, enough to kind of cover, not completely cover, but when it swirls around, it will have a nice coating to make sure nothing sticks to our pan. And I'm going to start turning it on to about a 7, so like a medium high. And we're using a red onion. Normally, I would use a yellow onion, but I am all out, so red onion it is. Yellow onions are a bit better for sauteing because their caramelization flavors come out better, just a bit nicer. But in a pinch, a red onion will work as well. And I'm going to do kind of a smaller dice on this. So I've made 5 slices across. And then we're going to do small squares because I don't want to have kind of big chunks of onion in my yellow chicken. There we go. So nice, small. And do again 5 slices across, so we just don't have, do one more there, big chunks, because we don't want the we want it subtle flavor, but we don't want it to be overpowering. And yellow chicken is just a really mild curry. I would say this would be like the curries that like Brits eat. Very mild. Okay. Put all of our onions in there. And we're going to let them start to saute. I'm going to get some tongs out. These are my favorite tongs, by the way. I got them from Williams-Sonoma, but they're, out of all of mine, they're the nicest. Like, they've held up through time. And they're just like good firm grip on them. Okay. Let's let those start to saute as we prep our carrots for our yellow chicken that we'll be serving with rice. And then in a little bit, we are going to do the second part of our prep for our sourdough breads. We earlier during our lunch stream, we made our basic one, and then we made it was fresh thyme, black pepper, and Gruyere cheese, which I think will be so delicious, especially after yesterday's did not turn out as well as it should have. Apparently, when I put it in my drink fridge outside to do its cold proof, and it partially froze it. It had little ice crystals on it, and because I think it was so cold, it didn't get that nice pop in the oven, and it left it a little more dense because it just didn't pop. So got to make some more today. But guess what? Out of all the loaves I've made, I think I've only made 3 bad loaves before. So I figured that's pretty good. One of them turned out well. The other one was just the one with the inclusion, and it was just too dense. So it was only 50-50 there. But I say pretty good track record. You just never, I didn't think at the time. I normally always have my sourdoughs proof in my indoor fridge here, but it was just so full of stuff that I was like, okay, I'll put it out in the drink fridge. We have plenty of rooms out there. But I forgot how it's an older fridge, and how it there's a freezer on top, and underneath it, right underneath the freezer in this one back part, all the drinks always freeze back there. And that's where I had my bread. So it wasn't smart thinking on my part. But now I know. And I can tell you guys, make sure your fridge isn't too cold. Otherwise, your sourdough won't turn out. Let's give this rice a stir because I'm starting to see it bubble. And I don't want it to stick to the bottom. And once it gets a nice boil on it, we will turn it down to low, and we'll put the lid on, and it will do the rest. Okay, we are going to quarter these carrots, and we're going to chop them up. We're going to dice them, so into kind of smaller pieces, because you want them to get nice and tender as we saute them. Because otherwise, you don't want a hard carrot in it. But what we'll do is we're going to saute up our vegetables. Then we'll add some chicken to it, and then we'll pull that all aside, and then we're going to make a lovely roux, and we will add curry powder and chicken broth to it, and a little bit of cream to make this nice kind of yellow color, hence the name yellow chicken. It was a super simple dish that my mom always made for us growing up. I don't know where she learned it or where it came from, but it's our favorite, and it's been passed down. I know my sister's kids, they love it. So it's whenever we're together, we always make it, because it is just one of those ones that just remind me of home. It's my childhood. And it's just super simple, but it has a lot of flavor. But it's not a spicy curry. It's a very savory curry. Okay, now I'm going to have this one because it was a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to peek over at our rice. It's getting a nice boil, so I'm going to give it one more stir. And then we're going to let it come to a boil one more time after we stir it. And then we're going to put our lid on it and cover it down, because I want to make sure that it's hot enough to really make those outer shell of the rice tender before I turn it down to low and kind of do that steam cook on it. Because if you turn it down to low too soon, sometimes you'll get a rice that's not as soft in the middle or on the outside, crunchy rice, which is good for paella, but we're not having paella today. Okay, now we've got a lovely rolling boil on it. So now I'm going to turn it down to low, my very low in the center. Give it one more stir so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot, hopefully, because that's the worst cleanup, when your rice sticks to the bottom of your pot. And we're going to put our lid on and hope that it doesn't boil over. Sometimes it does. Okay, let's quarter these. And soon we'll add our carrots in and start getting their saute, because our onions are starting to caramelize up nicely. But we want to wait. We want to make sure the onions completely caramelize to bring out their natural sweetness and flavor, because once we add the carrots in, they'll stop caramelizing. Just because the pan's not hot enough, and they really need to do it on their own, uncrowded. Okay, a few more carrots. Now, growing up, I've like elevated this meal a little bit since when I had it as a kid. Growing up, my mom literally just used a bag of mixed vegetables. But I want to say like 10 years ago, I started like prepping my vegetables fresh, and it just made it so much better. More flavor. Your vegetables weren't rubbery, because a lot of times like frozen, like mixed vegetables, I always feel like the green beans are rubbery and everything. I am still using frozen corn, but I feel like corn is one of those that like survives the freezing process well. And also, I would add in peas, but I have a few in my family who just absolutely hate peas beyond anything. We're going to cant this a little bit until it cools off just some so it doesn't boil over. But we want to seal in most of that steam. Okay, now that we have our onions over here, have a nice caramelization starting on them, they've got a good golden brown color, we're going to add in our carrots into our pot. We're going to let them start to saute up as well. Get a nice little browning on them. And let me mix this. This is why I love tongs. Tongs, I feel like, are so good. I never used to use them until about, I want to say like 6 or 7 years ago. And then I was cooking with my brother-in-law, and he used them for everything. And then I just realized they're so much easier to stir with, to move things with. And so now I think I use probably like 5 or 6 tongs a day in my cooking, because it's easy. It's my comfort thing. Okay, let's prep our herbs, our green onions. I'm going to chop up up until right here. We're going to leave the nice green ones to add in a little bit later, but we're going to start sauteing up the kind of the pale green and the white parts of it. That way they'll get a little bit more tender. It won't be as chewy. The ends that are more green are greater to add at the very end to get a nice little onion burst in your thing. But the white part, you definitely want to give it a nice saute so it's not tough and not too astringent. Okay. Give these a nice. We're going to give it a nice stir. Let our carrots cook. I'm going to turn my heat down just a little bit. And while these are starting to saute a little bit, let's start rolling out one of our loaves and getting ready to put it in its banneton basket for its cold proof. I'm going to just wipe my counter off here. I think there's a little bit of water right there. Okay. Turn this to the side. I think that's good. Let's do our first one. This is our basic. So it's been sitting, proofing on the counter for the last 6 hours, I would say. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna laminate it. So this is for our sourdough. And we're gonna do this while our carrots and onions and stuff are sauteing for our yellow chicken. That way we can use up some time. Now, when I do the laminating process, you really want to put a good coating of flour down on your counter, because it does stick a little. And I find putting a nice coat of flour on just makes it really easy. And then we're going to bring all of our dough out, and we're going to plop it. I know you can let it like fall out, but I'm not a patient person. So I always just go in there and grab it with my hands, and it doesn't really make any difference in my bread. And what I like to do is I put one side in, and then I cover it till both sides are nice. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna stretch it into a big rectangle. And this is what they call laminating. So not sure why it's called laminating, because anytime I think of laminating, I think of when I used to work as a teacher and I spent hours laminating stuff for students and then cutting them out. But I guess we're stretching it out. And this is gonna help give you that nice crumb. So you just wanna stretch it all the way out. And then what I do is I kind of fold a third in and a third in, and then we roll it up like a burrito, just like this. And then I'm gonna tuck these sides in, and I just keep pinching until it all comes together. And this is gonna give me my lovely crumb on my sourdough bread. And I will say it does make a big difference. I once forgot to do this step and my bread just, it wasn't as nice. This helps kind of get rid of some of those big like air bubble pockets. And then we're gonna put it in, well, let me first give my basket a good dusting of flour. Now I know you can use rice flour, but I always just use all-purpose flour because it's just what I have, and I'm not a big fan of getting all this fancy stuff if I can make do with what I have at home. So now you do it, you have your nice side down in your basket, and then we have our seam side up. We'll cover this with plastic and we stick it in the fridge until tomorrow and it'll be ready to bake. So we've got our first one done. Give my hands a quick wash. And let's work on our chicken, yellow chicken now that these have had a chance to saute. Look at that, we've got a nice little browning on them, which is perfect. Excellent. We're gonna add in about a cup of frozen corn. And we're gonna give it a nice stir. You can actually see the steam popping off. Now, if you wanted to, you could also add in some peas and some green beans. We don't have any green beans today, so we're just gonna do the corn and the carrots and green onions and parsley. And I am going to now start to season it a little bit with some garlic salt, not too much because we're gonna be making a nice base for our yellow chicken, but just about like a teaspoon or so. Then we're gonna add about a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm gonna shake it instead of pouring it out. You wanna have a nice kind of, a nice little, I will say like a black snow over it, a nice grayish pepper snow on top. We'll give it a nice little bite because we're using a mild curry. And give it a nice little stir. Beautiful. And now we're gonna add in our curry powder. So I got a little bit of sourdough on me. And we are going to use, this is where we're gonna use a good bit. And you wanna activate it in the heat first before adding liquid. So we're gonna use, that's about 1 tablespoon. I'm gonna say we're gonna start with 2 tablespoons of curry. And we're gonna heat it up in here. Start to let it like get out its like flavors. I'm gonna put a little splash more of olive oil in here. About, I want to say a teaspoon more. And that's gonna really, I will say oil really helps bring out like the flavors in spices. So this will be great for our yellow chicken. It will really help bring out that curry flavor. Okay. Oh, I feel like I have a sneeze coming. So I've got them coating and I want to let them sit. Now we're going to add in our chicken. So I'm using, we opened this the other day when we made our soup, but it is just hand-pulled rotisserie chicken from Costco. So this is great when you don't want to sit there and boil your own chicken and shred it. I love this stuff. It's a great time saver and it tastes delicious. It's already pre-cooked. I'm just going to kind of break up the big pieces and then I'm just going to do a slight chop through because they are sometimes pretty big. I'm just going to go over with my knife And this is rotisserie chicken. You could also like grab a rotisserie chicken from the store and shred it yourself. But you know, Costco does it for you, so that's a win. There we go. And then we're going to toss this in real quick. And we're going to let it kind of mix it up with our tongs. And I'm going to wash my hands real quick. There we go. And we're going to stir it up, and we're going to kind of let the flavors soak into our chicken and season that. And then we're going to make our kind of curry sauce in a little bit. But we already have our vegetables are nice, getting like that nice curry flavor to it. And then I'm just going to add a touch of water here to kind of bring up some of that curry flavor. You don't need much, because we're going to be removing almost all of this stuff out in just a second to make our roux. But I kind of want to get the nice, like, kind of, it's like, I would say like getting that nice bits on the bottom of the pan that you get from sauteing. There we go. And you can see the chicken's already kind of getting a nice golden color. Beautiful. We're going to let that simmer for a second. And then over here I have some warm water, and we're going to put a big spoonful of chicken bouillon in it. You could use chicken broth if you wanted. I'm just going to mix my chicken bouillon. I never buy chicken broth. I only just buy this because it's much easier. This jar makes like 10 boxes. It's more than 10 boxes of chicken broth. So it's a nice space saver. And when you have, 5 kids and a crazy house, pantry space is like, prime real estate in here. So anything I can do to save that is great. Plus, you can add a bit more flavor in here than you can with chicken broth. I find most chicken broth is very watery. Let's give this a flip. We'll use the other side. Now we're just waiting for our chicken. Beautiful. We're not going to throw in our green onions or our parsley yet. We're going to throw that into our roux when we make it, and then we'll add our chicken back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my big bowl here, and we're going to transfer everything in this pot into this bowl. That way I can make my roux in this pot because it has a nice sauce lid, and I'm only making one pot dish. There we go. Let's use my tongs to get most of it out, and then I'll dump it. But it's like a very simple dish, but it is so delicious. And it just reminds me of my mom. We had it probably once a week, maybe growing up, maybe 2 to 3 times a month. So maybe not every week, but it was definitely a favorite. Simple, but flavorful. Okay, I'm just trying to get all of these kind of bits at the bottom. And now we're going to make our roux for our gravy. Or like I guess not for our gravy, but for our curry sauce. I make a roux for my gravy too, so it's about the same thing. So we're going to start with some butter, and I want to make a good amount. So we're going to have a good amount of butter in here. Probably going to use kind of a big pat, which is probably like 3 tablespoons, because we want to be able to add a lot of liquid to it to make a nice kind of sauce for it. And I'm going to turn up my heat to about a medium, like a 5. And where did I put my whisk? Here it is. And you need your whisk to make the roux, and we need flour to make roux. And what we're going to do is first you're going to melt your butter. But you don't want to get it on super high and bubble it, like too high where it scorches. Then we're going to add in flour, and we're just going to stir it and heat up the flour and the butter together just for a little bit. We're not going to make it as deep of a color as if you're making a gumbo. So for a gumbo base, you would heat your butter and your flour until it has like a rich brown color. We're not going to be cooking it that long. So we're just making a very mild roux, I will say. Okay, all of my butter is melted. So we're going to put in, I'm going to do a couple of tablespoons of flour. I'm just spreading them all around. I might add a little bit more. I'm going to stir it and see how it will look nice. Do you see we have kind of this paste forming, which is what we want. This is what's going to be the base to our roux. We were mixing, and we're going to start by adding a little bit at a time. And you're just going to be whisking vigorously, incorporating this, and it will like thin down into a nice thick sauce. There we go. And we're just take your whisk and go through and really like push it into the thing and then whisk around. And this is also like a base. If you're making a gravy, you would do flour and butter, and then you'd add your meat drippings and broth to make your gravy. So it's actually like a great thing. Like you can use to make several different recipes, like chicken a la king you make a roux with.
You have a question. Is that broth you're pouring in?
Yes. So it was water and chicken bouillon. So essentially chicken broth. And you see, but we have a nice, lovely, thick broth forming, and it will get thicker. You add a little water in and it thins out, but then as the heat goes through, it thickens up again. Okay, so now we're going to take a little bit of extra curry. We had our meat and everything in it, but we're going to add just a little bit more in here. You don't need too much because our meat and vegetable thing will pack a little punch too. So we're going to add just about a teaspoon. And if your curry is not fresh, you will need to add more. So spices are typically, once you open them up, they have like where they're really potent for about the first year, but spices never really go bad. They just kind of dull out, which means you just need to add a little bit more to get the same flavor. It's one of those things where like I would make food over at my mom's house, who I typically make all of her food for them. And so all of her spices are always really old and whatnot. And I'm just like, how is everything so bland? And I'd just be pouring it in. And then I finally like went through her spice cabinet one time, and she had spices that were like 20 years old, which is insane. So make sure your spices are fresh, especially for our yellow chicken here. You want that curry to really pop in there. So you want to have fresh spices that, you've opened within the last year. It's one of those things, they don't go bad, they just get dull. Get a little of that off. And keep adding our broth in. So I used about 4 cups of broth in here, and we'll see if I need to add a little bit more in just a second, depending on how thickened up it gets. I'm going to turn up my heat just a bit. We're going to let this simmer, and then I'm going to taste it, see if it needs anything else. I think it's pretty good. Maybe a pinch more. Add a little bit of garlic salt. Not much, because I know we're going to add in there, but just a pinch, because remember, this is what's also going to really season your rice as well. So you're going to pour this over your rice, and that's, so you want the flavor strong enough that when it's dulled out with eating the rice, it's still nice and vibrant. So we're going to let this simmer. I'm going to whisk it every now and then, but I'm going to chop up our green onions and our parsley to add into our roux. We're just going to do a nice small slice on them, and this will add just a nice fresh pop to it as well. Kind of elevate it, make a really rich sauce just a little bit fresher. There we go. And I find it's nice to try to hold your green onions together as best as possible, so that you're just cutting a small area versus like them flailed out. And we're just going to go over a couple more times. Perfect. Look at this lovely bubble we're getting on here. Turn it down a little bit. Beautiful. You can see this is like this nice kind of texture right here is the perfect texture that you want, because you don't want it too thick and you don't want it runny. But we're gonna add a little bit of cream because you don't want to add a lot. Look at that, my whisk fell right in there. Let me go rinse it. You don't want to add too much cream because you don't want to dull out the flavors, but you want a nice, it just works well with curry. So, and you can see how just that was probably about not a half a tablespoon, and it really just brought like a nice creamy color to it. So I think there we go. That's all we need. And it just will make a nice smooth coating on it. Okay. Now I'm going to take my whisk out because I learned my lesson the first time. Let's toss in these green onions. And then let's mince up this parsley here. We're going to get all the main things. You don't want to use the stems of it because those will be chewy. They won't add any good flavor. So just kind of pull the main parts off, the nice leaves, leaving the stems behind. I know herb prep isn't the most glamorous or glorious part of cooking, but that's why.
Question: is that a soup that you're making?
No, this is called yellow chicken. So this is a roux that we're going to be putting with our chicken and our sauteed carrots, and you serve it over rice. So it's a very mild curry that you serve. It's not spicy and it's not like overly in your face. It's super mild. So I will say it's a great introduction to curry. You know how like butter chicken is having its like it moment right now? This is kind of like very simple on the lines of that as well. Let's go. There's my whisk. Let's do this. We're going to whisk this in nicely. And then we're going to add our meat back in. So this was our chicken, our like rotisserie shredded chicken, carrots, corn, onions. We're going to add all of this back into our lovely kind of curried roux. Perfect. There we go. Put that over here, and then we're just going to toss it in until it's completely coated. I've got my temperature down to low. Beautiful. And then you just want to make sure you get everything lovely and coated because you want to make sure there's sauce in every bite. Beautiful. This looks so delicious. Okay, where's my spoon? Now that we've added in all of our kind of seasoned vegetables and chicken, I want to make sure it has all the right flavors. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to let it be on low and simmer. Let's roll out our next loaf because we're still waiting on our rice to cook up, and then we'll prep our fruit. This was our specialty loaf that we made, which is we use fresh thyme, gruyere cheese, and black pepper. So we'll have a nice kick. I will say, if you haven't put black pepper in your sourdough before, do it. It is like so good. I've made a couple loaves with black pepper in it, and it's one of those things where you're just like, oh, it like is so delicious. So I have my well-floured surface, and then I'm just going to scoop this out because who has the time to wait for it to fall naturally? So we're just going to pull it out. Beautiful. Grab any of those little bits. And then because it's sticky, what I like to do is I take this so that my laminating process goes a lot easier. I just kind of coat both sides in here, and then we're going to stretch it.
So you gotta ask what type of cheese is in it?
Gruyere. It's it's the typical the cheese that you would have in fondue. It's delicious. You can like get it in a block, or some places have it shredded. But it's a very I mean, it's kind of got a similar to like Parmesan, not quite. I think it's more tart than Parmesan, but delicious. You can kind of see I've got it shredded. There it's shredded in here. Now we've got it stretched out. What we do is we fold it in, and we're going to fold it in. And now we're going to do our beautiful roll like a burrito up. And now this one's going to be in a circle, in my circle one instead of my loaf one. I'm going to put a nice dusting of flour in here. You can use the rice flour, but I find that all-purpose flour just works out great too. And then I'm just going to we're going to just keep pinching it until it forms our nice little, the seams all come together. Keeping like the bottom nice and pretty, because you want the seam on the top, not on the bottom or the side. So you see how you can just kind of pinch it together nicely. Beautiful. And then you just plop it in here. And so you have the seam side or the ugly side up, and the bottom side is what you're going to score in tomorrow. So I'll cover them with plastic wrap, or if you have those fancy covers, and then you just take it out of the fridge after 12 or 48 hours and you bake it. Let me give my hands a quick wash. I'm going to check my rice, do a quick peek, because I think we're close, but it might need a hot minute or more. And if it does, we'll surprisingly, it is done already. Okay, well, let's serve up. Let me get our plate, and I'm going to show you how we serve up dinner. So here is our lovely rice, and it is nice and fluffy, and that's what you get from when you rinse it. You get a nice fluffy rice. So here, see how it just falls apart, and it is lovely. That is the perfect way. And then we spread it out because we want all of our delicious flavors. Let me get this is my favorite spoon. It's a nice shovel. And you take your yellow chicken curry, and you're going to just pile it on, and you will mix it into the rice as you eat. So easy, delicious. Our yellow chicken is this meal I had growing up all the time, served over some jasmine rice. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We had kind of a simple, easy, quick dinner that we made in less than 30 minutes, which is always awesome. 35 minutes. Well, we did some other stuff in there, so close enough. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking every day, showing you what meals we're making for our family, and also answering any questions that you have. So always feel free to comment or message us with any questions or recipes you'd like to see us try. Well, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.